The bank statements didn't add up. I sat at the kitchen table in our Pittsburgh townhouse, staring at 3 months of withdrawals I'd never authorized. $14,000, moved in small increments to an account I'd never seen before. My wife had been careful about it. 200 here, 500 there, never enough to trigger an alert. But I'd spent 20 years reading circuit diagrams and tracing electrical faults through industrial buildings. I knew how to follow a current, even when someone tried to hide where it was going. My name is Marcus Cole. I'm 38 years old, and I work as an industrial electrician at the Allegheny River Steel Processing Plant. It's honest work, dangerous sometimes, tedious often, but it pays the mortgage and keeps my daughter Lily in a good school. I'm not the kind of man who makes headlines or turns heads at parties. I show up, I do my job, I come home. For 15 years of marriage, I thought that was enough. I was wrong. My wife started acting different about 6 months ago. Little things at first, passwords changed on our shared accounts, late nights at the office that never used to happen, a sudden interest in her appearance that had nothing to do with me. She works as an HR manager at Hargrove and Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm downtown. Good salary, good benefits, the kind of job that makes you feel important. And somewhere along the way, she decided that feeling important at work wasn't enough. She needed to feel important everywhere, except at home. The night everything changed started with a dinner party. My wife's best friend Vanessa had invited us over to her place in Shadyside, one of those renovated Victorian houses that cost more than I'll make in a decade. Vanessa had divorced her husband 2 years earlier and walked away with the house, both cars, and enough alimony to fund a small country. She wore that divorce like a trophy, bringing it up at every gathering as proof that women didn't need men, they just needed better lawyers. I never liked Vanessa. There was something predatory about the way she looked at happy couples, like she was studying them for weaknesses. But my wife adored her, said Vanessa was empowering and liberated. I said Vanessa was a woman who destroyed her family and wanted company in the wreckage. That night at dinner, after the third bottle of wine, Vanessa brought up something I'd only heard about on the internet. Have you two ever considered opening your marriage? My wife laughed, but it wasn't the surprised laugh of someone hearing a ridiculous idea. It was the nervous laugh of someone hearing an idea they'd already been thinking about. Vanessa, stop, my wife said, but she was smiling. I'm serious. Monogamy is a social construct. The happiest couples I know have arrangements. It actually strengthens the relationship because there's no secrecy, no guilt. I set down my fork. The happiest couples you know are divorced, Vanessa. The table went quiet. Vanessa's smile tightened. My wife shot me a look that could have cut glass. We drove home in silence. I thought the conversation was dead. I was wrong about that too. 3 weeks later, my wife sat me down in the living room after Lily had gone to bed. She had that rehearsed look on her face, the one she used when she was about to deliver bad news at work. I want to talk about what Vanessa said, about opening our marriage. Don't say it like that, like it's something dirty. It is something dirty. It's permission to cheat with extra steps. It's not cheating if both people agree. I don't agree. She crossed her arms. You haven't even thought about it. I don't need to think about it. I married you. One woman. That was the deal. People change, Marcus. Needs change. I love you, but I need something more. Something different. Different how? She couldn't look at me. I've already met someone. The words landed like a physical blow. Not because they surprised me, I'd suspected for weeks, but because hearing them spoken out loud in our living room, in the house where we'd brought our daughter home from the hospital, made them real in a way that suspicion never could. Who? His name is Derek Voss. He's a financial consultant at my firm. We've been talking for a few months, and I want to explore that connection. Openly. Honestly. Honestly. You've been talking to another man for months, and you're using the word honestly. I'm telling you now. That's the honest part. I stood up and walked to the window. Our street was quiet. Normal houses, normal families, normal lives. From the outside, we looked like one of them. And if I say no, then we have a bigger problem than I thought. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't a negotiation. She wasn't asking my permission. She was informing me of a decision she'd already made, and my only role was to accept it gracefully. The open marriage pitch was theater, a way to rebrand her affair as something progressive and mutual. Vanessa had coached her well. I need time to think, I said. Take all the time you need. She went to bed. I stayed at the window for another hour, watching the streetlights and thinking about the bank statements hidden in my toolbox in the garage. $14,000. A new man. A best friend, whispering poison, and a wife who'd looked me in the eyes and called betrayal honesty. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I went to the garage and started doing what I do best, tracing the current back to its source. The money trail was the first thing I followed. Our shared laptop still had her email cached, and my wife had never bothered to change the password because she assumed I'd never look. She was right about that, until she gave me a reason. The transfers went to a joint account she'd opened with Vanessa. Not Derek Vanessa. The account had been active for 4 months, slowly accumulating cash from our savings. Alongside the transfers, I found emails between my wife and a divorce attorney named Richard Pratt. The correspondence was detailed and strategic. My wife had been planning to file for divorce for 3 months. She wanted the house, full custody of Lily, spousal support, and a 60-40 split of all marital assets in her favor. The open marriage conversation wasn't about openness at all. It was a trap. If I agreed, she'd use my consent as evidence that the marriage had broken down mutually, weakening my position in court. If I refused and she could document my controlling behavior, she'd paint me as the reason the marriage failed. Either way, she walked away with everything. But the emails revealed something else, something that made my hands shake. My wife was pregnant, 7 weeks along, confirmed by her OB/GYN 2 days before our living room conversation. The baby wasn't mine. We hadn't been intimate in over 2 months. It was Derek's. And according to her emails with the attorney, the plan was to wait until the pregnancy was undeniable, then claim I was the father to secure child support payments alongside the divorce settlement. I read that email 3 times. Then I closed the laptop, went to the bathroom, and threw up. The next morning, I drove to work like nothing had happened. I checked electrical panels, replaced faulty breakers, ran diagnostic tests on the plant's main power distribution system. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. 20 years of working with high-voltage systems had taught me one critical lesson: panic kills. When you're holding live wires, the worst thing you can do is react emotionally. You assess, you plan, you execute with precision. That's what I intended to do. My coworker Ray noticed something was off during our lunch break. Ray had been at the plant for 30 years, a Vietnam veteran with a bullshit detector that could pick up signals from orbit. "You look like a man with a problem," he said, unwrapping his sandwich. "Marriage stuff. That's not a problem. That's a war. And wars are won by the side with better intelligence." "What do you mean?" "I mean, whatever she's doing, find out everything before you make a move. Document it. Dates, times, amounts, names. When you walk into that courtroom, and you will walk into a courtroom, you want to be the one holding all the cards." Ray had been divorced twice. He spoke from experience and from scars. "One more thing," he said. "Don't let her know you know. The moment she realizes you're onto her, she'll start covering tracks. Right now, she thinks you're just the dumb electrician who doesn't understand big words. Let her keep thinking that." It was the best advice anyone had ever given me. Over the next 4 weeks, I became a ghost in my own marriage. I smiled at dinner. I asked about her day. I played the role of the oblivious husband so convincingly that my wife actually started feeling guilty, or at least performing guilt. She brought me coffee in the mornings. She suggested date nights that always got canceled at the last minute. She told me she was still thinking about the open marriage idea, as if the decision hadn't already been made. Meanwhile, I was building my case. I installed a dash cam in her car, the kind that records even when the engine is off. It captured her meetings with Derek in parking garages, their long lunches at restaurants across the river in Sewickley, and one particularly damaging conversation where Derek outlined their financial plan in explicit detail. "Once the divorce goes through, we consolidate everything into the new LLC," Derek said, his voice tinny through the dashcam audio. "Your half of the house equity plus the spousal support gives us enough for the down payment on the Lawrenceville property. Vanessa handles the paperwork since she's done it before. What about Marcus? What about him? He's an electrician. He'll get a lawyer from the phone book who charges $200 an hour and doesn't know the difference between equitable distribution and a circuit breaker. By the time he figures out what happened, we'll be 3 moves ahead." My wife laughed at that. The circuit breaker joke. She laughed at a joke about her husband being too stupid to protect himself. I saved that recording in 3 separate locations. The next piece fell into place through Lily. My daughter was 14 and sharp as a razor. She came to me one evening while my wife was out again and handed me a folded piece of paper. "I found this in Mom's desk," she said. "I wasn't snooping. I needed a stapler." It was a printed email from Richard Pratt, her attorney, outlining the custody strategy. The plan was to portray me as an absent father whose dangerous occupation made him an unfit primary parent. They'd already drafted affidavits from Vanessa and 2 of my wife's coworkers claiming I had anger issues and emotional instability. Dad, is Mom trying to take me away from you? She's trying to do a lot of things, sweetheart. I won't go with her. I'll tell the judge. You might have to. Then I'll tell the truth, that she's never home, that she doesn't ask about my homework or come to my games, that the only person who's actually here is you. I hugged my daughter and promised her that everything would be okay. It was the first promise I'd made in weeks that I intended to keep. I hired a lawyer the next day, not from the phone book from a referral by Ray's ex-wife's attorney, a woman named Catherine Park who specialized in high-conflict divorces. Catherine had a reputation for being ruthless in the courtroom and compassionate with her clients, which was exactly what I needed. When I laid out everything, the financial transfers, the pregnancy, the dash cam recordings, the custody strategy, the fabricated affidavits, Catherine leaned back in her chair and smiled. They think you're an idiot, she said. Everyone does. Good. Let's use that. Catherine's strategy was surgical. We wouldn't file first. We'd let my wife make her move, then counter with overwhelming evidence that would destroy her case before it started. But timing was everything. We needed her to commit to the fraud before we exposed it. The pregnancy was the key. My wife still hadn't told me about it. According to her medical records, which Catherine obtained through legal discovery channels, she was now 11 weeks along. In 4 more weeks, she'd start showing. She'd have to either tell me or file for divorce before the truth became obvious. We waited. And while we waited, I kept collecting. I found out that Vanessa's role was bigger than I'd thought. She wasn't just my wife's cheerleader, she was her business partner. The joint account they'd opened was linked to a newly formed LLC called Vanguard Property Solutions. The plan was to use my wife's divorce settlement to fund real estate purchases, with Vanessa providing the expertise she'd gained from gutting her own ex-husband. Derek would handle the financial structure. My wife would provide the capital, my capital, earned through 15 years of crawling through industrial buildings and getting shocked by faulty wiring. They'd built an entire business plan around stealing my life. The confrontation came on a Thursday evening in October. My wife came home early, which was unusual. She was wearing a loose sweater, which was more unusual. She sat across from me at the kitchen table and took a deep breath. I have something to tell you. Okay, I'm pregnant. I let the silence stretch. 3 seconds. 5. 10. She started to fidget. Marcus, say something. How far along? About 12 weeks. 12 weeks. I nodded slowly. We haven't had sex in 3 months. Her face went white. She'd prepared for this moment. Vanessa had probably coached her through a dozen scenarios, but the direct simplicity of the math caught her off guard. I know this is a shock. Whose baby is it? Marcus. Whose? Baby. It's Derek's. She said it fast, like ripping off a bandage. I'm sorry. I know this isn't how you imagined. You're right. I imagined my wife would be faithful. Silly me. I want a divorce. I know. You filed the paperwork 3 months ago. Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Richard Pratt, attorney at law, I continued. You're asking for the house, full custody, spousal support, and a 60-40 asset split. You've drafted fake affidavits claiming I have anger issues. You've hidden $14,000 of our savings in a joint account with Vanessa. And you've been planning to use my child support payments to fund a real estate company with your best friend and your boyfriend. She looked like someone had pulled the ground out from under her. How do you? Because I'm not the idiot you think I am. I pulled out a manila folder and placed it on the table. Inside were printouts of every email, bank statement, recording transcript, and legal document I'd collected over the past 2 months. This is what I have: financial fraud, falsified legal documents, recordings of Derek discussing your plan to defraud me, medical records proving the pregnancy timeline, and a sworn statement from your own daughter describing your absence as a parent. My wife reached for the folder. I pulled it back. Don't touch it. This is a copy. My attorney has the originals. So does the forensic accountant we hired to trace the money you stole. And as of this morning, so does the family court judge who will be overseeing our divorce. You can't do this. It's already done. My attorney filed a counter petition this morning. I'm requesting full custody of Lily, sole ownership of the house, which I've been paying for since we bought it, and a complete reversal of the funds you illegally transferred. Given the evidence of fraud, adultery, and financial concealment, Catherine believes we'll get everything. Catherine? Catherine Park. You might want to Google her. She's won 11 out of her last 12 custody cases. My wife sat very still. I could see her mind racing, running through options, looking for an escape route. There wasn't one. What about Derek? She whispered. Funny you should ask. Derek's firm has a strict policy against workplace relationships, especially between employees in different power positions. HR was notified this morning. Anonymously, of course, but the evidence was quite specific. I imagine he's having a difficult afternoon. You're destroying everything. No, you destroyed everything. I'm just making sure you don't profit from it. She started crying. I'd expected that. Vanessa had probably told her that tears were a weapon, that men crumbled when women cried, and maybe some men did. But I'd spent 20 years working in buildings where one wrong connection could kill you. I'd learned to keep my hands steady when everything around me was falling apart. What do you want? She asked through her tears. I want what's fair. The house stays with me and Lily. You get your personal belongings, and whatever's in your individual retirement account. No spousal support, the fraud disqualifies you. Shared custody with primary residence with me, reviewed annually. And the money you took gets returned in full. That's everything. You're leaving me with nothing. I'm leaving you with more than you plan to leave me. She wiped her eyes and stood up. For a moment, I saw the woman I'd married smart, ambitious, beautiful in a way that made you forget she could be cruel. Then the moment passed, and she was just a stranger standing in my kitchen. Vanessa said you'd never figure it out. Vanessa said a lot of things. Most of them were wrong. She went upstairs to pack a bag. I sat at the table and listened to the sounds of drawers opening and closing, hangers scraping across the closet rod, the zipper of a suitcase. 15 years of marriage ending in the sound of luggage. Lily came downstairs while her mother was loading the car. She stood beside me at the window, watching. Is she coming back? Not to live here. Good. I looked at my daughter. She was too young to carry this much knowledge about adult failure, but she carried it anyway, with a steadiness that reminded me of myself. You okay, kid? I'm okay, Dad. Are you? Getting there. We watched her mother drive away. The taillights disappeared around the corner, and the street was quiet again. The aftermath unfolded over the next 3 months with the mechanical precision of a well-wired system. Derek Voss was terminated from Hargrove and Associates within a week. The HR investigation uncovered not just his relationship with my wife, but a pattern of similar entanglements with subordinates going back years. His professional reputation was shattered. Last I heard, he'd taken a job at a small accounting firm in Erie, making a third of his former salary. My wife moved in with him briefly, but the relationship, stripped of its secrecy and excitement, collapsed within 2 months. Turned out, Derek wasn't interested in raising another man's child. He was interested in a married woman who made him feel powerful. Once she was just a pregnant, unemployed woman with legal problems, the fantasy evaporated. Vanessa's downfall was almost poetic. The LLC she'd created with my wife drew the attention of a forensic accountant who'd been hired by Vanessa's ex-husband's attorney. It turned out Vanessa had used the same playbook in her own divorce: hidden accounts, fraudulent transfers, fabricated claims. Her ex-husband, armed with new evidence, filed a motion to reopen their divorce settlement. The court agreed. Vanessa lost the house, the alimony, and a significant portion of the assets she'd stolen. The woman who'd taught my wife how to destroy a marriage had her own destruction handed back to her. My wife ended up in a small apartment in Wilkinsburg, working part-time at a staffing agency. She had the baby, a boy, in March. I felt nothing when I heard the news. Not anger, not satisfaction, not sadness. Just the quiet recognition that her choices had consequences, and those consequences would follow her for the rest of her life. The custody arrangement was finalized in January. Lily stayed with me during the school year and visited her mother on alternating weekends. My daughter adapted quickly, probably because her daily life didn't change much. I was the one who'd always been there, making breakfast, checking homework, driving her to soccer practice. Her mother's absence was less a loss than a formalization of what had already been true for months. Catherine Park called me after the final hearing. You know, most clients in your position want to celebrate. They want to gloat. I'm not most clients. No, you're not. But you should know what you did was remarkable. Most people in your situation would have confronted her immediately, would have screamed and threatened and given her exactly the ammunition she needed. You waited. You planned. You executed. That's rare. I'm an electrician. It's what we do. She laughed. If you ever get tired of wiring buildings, you'd make a hell of a lawyer. I drove home from that call thinking about what Ray had said all those months ago. Wars are won by the side with better intelligence. He was right, but he'd left out the most important part. Wars are won by the side that stays calm when everything is on fire. That evening, Lily and I ordered pizza and watched a movie in the living room of the house that was now, legally and fully, ours. The mortgage was almost paid off. The accounts were restored. The lies had been exposed, and the liars held accountable. It wasn't a Hollywood ending. There were no explosions, no dramatic confrontations in ballrooms, no threats delivered over knife blades. It was quieter than that. Cleaner. "Dad?" Lily said during a commercial break. "Yeah? Thanks for being the boring, reliable one." I laughed. Really laughed. For the first time in months. "Anytime, kid." The next morning, I drove to the plant and met Ray at our usual table in the break room. He slid a coffee across to me. "You look different," he said. "How so?" "Like a man who doesn't have a problem anymore." "I've still got problems, just not that one." That's all any of us can ask for. We drank our coffee and headed to the floor. There were panels to check, circuits to trace, systems to keep running. The work hadn't changed. The building hadn't changed. But I had. I used to think being underestimated was a curse. The quiet guy, the blue-collar husband, the man who fixed things while other people broke them. But being underestimated is actually a gift. If you know how to use it, it means nobody sees you coming. It means they let their guard down around you because they've already decided you don't matter. My wife decided I didn't matter. Her boyfriend decided I didn't matter. Her best friend decided I didn't matter. And one by one, they learned that the man they'd dismissed as irrelevant was the only one in the room who understood how things actually worked. Not just electrical systems, not just buildings and wiring and voltage. People, motives, consequences. I walked through the plant that morning with my toolbox in one hand and my hard hat in the other, just another electrician starting another shift. Nobody looked twice. Nobody ever did. And that was exactly how I liked it.